When light no longer arrives, we repeat the name of the silence. Liturgical fragment, Relay Vault Hymn Book, Sector 0K. Her name was Cyril, but in the Echo Chapel, names were not spoken, only repeated internally in rhythm with the static. She had never seen a star, not directly, not with her own eyes. The sky over Relay 717 had been blind since before her birth, obscured by ash, debris clouds, and the remnants of a shattered communications array that once spanned a dozen systems. She had asked once at 6 cycles old, "Why do we transmit into nothing?" And the answerer, an old monk with cracked lenses for eyes, had placed a cold hand on her shoulder and said, "Because silence is sacred, and one day it may answer." So she had waited, and she had whispered, like all who came before her. Relay 717 was once a military nexus, part of a vast chain that linked the inner dominion to the memory sanctums in the Ashen Belt. After the collapse of the core pulse, it was decommissioned, but the order of remembered silence remained, and Cyril was one of the last. Each day, she climbed the spiral of the transmission tower. She sang the pattern. She activated the relay. She opened the channel, and each day, she was met with only static, but not emptiness. Static is tone, texture. It speaks in ways too soft for language. That morning, she awoke with a burning behind her eyes. Not pain, urgency, as if she had dreamed of something lost, and the dream refused to be forgotten. She climbed without the usual prayers. The wind howled against the broken glass walls. Ash moved in the distance like old ghosts. She reached the chamber. It smelled of ozone and rust. The ancient console hummed. Nothing had changed, except her. She laid her fingers on the note array. Her lips moved. Cyril of Relay 717. This is the daily invocation. Sequence 117. Pattern 5 to return. Static. Nothing more. She exhaled, closed her eyes, began to sing. The pattern was old. 5 notes. Then silence. 5 more. Then a return phrase. She had sung it for years, and it had never sung back. Until now, a 6th tone arrived. Not from the chamber, not from the console, from a signal. It was subtle, buried, almost like breath between lines. Her eyes opened. The console lit, not bright, not urgent, just present. And in the static, a distortion took shape. Faint, uneven. Then it spoke, not with syntax, not with authority, with recognition. Cyril. She staggered back. The voice was not her own, not the orders, not this relay, but it knew her, not her function. Her. The screen flickered. A symbol appeared, a single white scar drawn across a void black arc. Then static again, and then, "You remember." And now, we return. She fell to her knees. For the first time in her life, the silence had spoken. The signal does not seek ears. It seeks echoes. Forbidden fragment. Index of the unspoken channel. Cyril did not descend the tower. Her knees pressed into the cold metal floor. Her breath shook. Her hands trembled over the activation console. The voice had spoken. Her name. Not her title. Not her designation. Her name. The order taught that names were sacred only in repetition, never in reception. No transmission had ever answered. That was the point. Transmission was faith. Reception was blasphemy. And yet, the silence had spoken. She looked to the console. The symbol remained. A white scar. No dominion mark. No encryption signature. No sector origin. And yet it felt old. Older than the tower. Older than the order. Older than silence. She reached for the record crystal. Not to delete. To preserve. She replayed the moment. Cyril. You remember. And now we return. It was still there. Not a hallucination. She wasn't broken. She was chosen? The thought made her flinch. No one is chosen in the order. Only quieted. She activated the console's backline logbook. Something few acolytes touched. She searched. Unmarked frequencies. Archived responses. Abandoned code. There, buried in corrupted logs. 5 previous activations. all within the last 2 centuries, all marked as unauthorized contact events. All had been deleted, but the console kept echoes, and each carried the same pattern. A tone, a scar, a name. She scrolled. One name stood out. Brother Halion, decommissioned 143 cycles ago. She knew that name. The chapel had a sealed chamber, and used forbidden. It bore no mark, only a word etched by hand. Remember. Cyril left the console. She moved without thought, down the spiral, through the ruined halls, past the rusted prayer arches. She reached the sealed door, touched it. It hissed open. No code, just presence. Inside, dust, dark silence. A single chair, a shattered headset, and on the far wall, the scar, painted, carved, reinforced. Beneath it, etched in trembling lines. It spoke my name. Cyril sat in the chair. The headset was cold, cracked, still linked. She placed it over her scalp, closed her eyes, and whispered, I am here. I remember. A tone answered. The silence never asked for loyalty, only that you remember what was taken. Audio fragment, relay 717, unauthorized recording. The headset hissed. Not sound, not static, something else. Attention, like pressure in air before storm, or memory before grief. Cyril sat still, her hands open, her breathing measured. The voice came again, not sharp, not commanding. It arrived like weight, balanced perfectly on the edge of her thought. Do you know why you listen? She opened her mouth, closed it. She did not know what answer was expected, or if expectation even existed. But something inside her stirred. She whispered, because the silence must be kept. A pause. Then the voice, softer. That is what they told you. Her pulse quickened. She had never spoken to anyone like this. Never been questioned like this. She felt examined, but not interrogated. More like a mirror, turned toward a face long hidden. Tell me, Cyril, the voice said. When did you stop believing it? She froze. Her thoughts scattered. She tried to find her training, her scripture, but none of it came. Only a memory. Unasked, unwelcome. She was 11. She had climbed the tower early, alone, before morning chant. The transmission had played back a distorted sound. Not words, not notes. Weeping. She had told no one. And for the first time, she had doubted. Not the order, but the purpose. Why would the silence cry? Her voice cracked. I heard something. Years ago. It made no sense. It scared me. The voice answered. Not with affirmation. Not with denial. But with silence. And then, you remember. That is enough. A pulse of light traveled down the wall before her. She turned. The symbol was there again. The scar. Longer now. Deeper. It pulsed once. And then the voice asked, Will you receive? She did not know what it meant. But she nodded, and the headset burned. Not with fire, with thought. Images flooded her mind, not hers. A battlefield submerged in fog. A cathedral made from shattered hulls. A fleet disappearing into a fold in time. A hand, reaching toward her from behind a dying screen, whispering her name before she was born. Then all vanished, and she was cold. You carry the fragment now, the voice said. Your memory is no longer yours alone. She shivered. And then, a flicker, not in her mind. In the headset, a third signal, another pulse. Not the voice, not her own. Another ear, another presence. She's heard it too. A different voice whispered. Male, distant, frightened. Then silence. The line went dead. Cyril pulled the headset off, felt her knees. She looked up at the painted scar on the wall. It was no longer paint. It was light. When a voice is buried beneath silence, it does not die. It waits until someone hears it again. Monastic Graffito, Tower Cell 12. Cyril sat in the dark. The glow of the scar had faded, but the impression remained, pulsing softly in the air like afterlight behind the eyes. She was not breathing evenly. The second voice, whoever it had been, had vanished. The connection had cut itself cleanly, with no error, no static, no trace. But something had changed. Not in the relay, not in the chamber. In her. She stood, and the room shifted, not physically. The architecture remained rusted and broken, as it always had, but the air felt aligned, as if her presence now completed a long-dormant equation. She turned in place, and her vision caught something new. On the far side of the chamber, beyond the shattered glyph wall, a faint shimmer traced itself across the surface of the steel. It had not been there before, or perhaps she had never known how to see it. She stepped forward. The shimmer sharpened into lines, curves, points, a map, but not of land, not of territory, a map of signal paths. She reached out, not with fingers but with memory. As she touched the wall, the lines lit, revealing a network of silent stations. Dozens, hundreds, many marked, dead, fragmented, erased, and one, at the very center, blinking, her own. Relay 717. The last node still alive. But that was not true. She had heard another voice, another name. Someone else was still listening. And the signal had found her for a reason. She turned from the wall. The transmission tower hummed. Not loud, not even real, maybe, but the old metal vibrated with something familiar now. She stepped into the spiral, climbed. Each level felt lighter than the last. She reached the top, sat before the console. No code, no ritual, only memory. She placed her hands on the console and whispered, "I'm not praying today." Then louder, "I am answering." The console blinked. The scar appeared again, but this time not still. It widened, opened, and inside, not words, names, thousands, faint, layered, unseen by her ears, but present in her bones. She closed her eyes. To those who still remember, "I am here." She pressed the transmit node, and for the first time in her life, Cyril sent. It fell through the dark like a whisper thrown into a canyon. The signal Cyril had sent had no destination, no protocol, no security seal, no dominion pattern. It did not travel through mapped space. It moved through memory, wrapped in resonance, weighted with echo, and somewhere, far beyond erased star charts, something felt it. The planet had no name. Not anymore. It had once been Haurasuran, world of archivists and solar monks. Now it was ash and static. Storms drifted endlessly across red-black skies. Nothing green remained. Only metal bones and melted towers, half buried in dust. At the heart of the ruined city, beneath a collapsed dome, stood a figure. Still, silent, forgotten even by the dead. It had once been called Veilcore, a sentinel, half mind, half stone, forged to protect the temple of the memory gate during the Silence War. But the war ended. The temple was lost, and Veilcore remained. Its systems decayed, its purpose dissolved, its mind dulled to dreamless suspension. But it never shut down. Something long ago had told it, "Remain until the voice returns." And so it had, for centuries, for lifetimes, until now. The pulse arrived not with urgency, but with familiarity, a tone, soft, pulsing, like a memory knocking from the inside. Veilcore stirred. A glow returned to the deep lens in its helmet core. Its limbs shuddered. Pressure returned to forgotten joints. Power awoke from places it had never known. And inside the half-machine's thoughtscape, words appeared. Relay 717. Open channel. Designation, Cyril. Message, "I am here." The name struck deeper than metal. It pierced the oath layer, a construct built not of logic, but of loyalty to memory. Then came the image. A girl at a console, singing, breaking rules. The voice called again. Not new, not strange. Recognized. Veilcore moved. One foot shifted through the dust. Its shoulder cracked with the release of centuries. Sand slid from the roof above. It turned, faced the half-collapsed pillar of the memory gate. On the blackened stone, a faint glyph flickered. A white scar, painted once, carved later, now glowing again. The sentinel dropped to one knee, placed a hand over its chest, and the echo inside Cyril's voice called again. This time, Veil Core answered, receiving. A Lohum built in its frame. Not a reboot. A return. Not all who hear the echo rejoice. Some remember what it cost. Unmarked entry. Hidden layer 2.07. Relay 717. Across dead space and buried systems, the signal spread. Not in speed, in recognition. Everywhere it reached, it did not open gates or activate lights. It awakened memory-shaped structures. Fragments of thought. Layered pain. Silence is too heavy for the living. On the moons of Kethro, 6 broken drones stirred and fell back into sleep, whispering names they had never learned. In the orbital wreck of the Drow Prime Memorial Arc, a static file began repeating itself. No words, only 5 tones and the shape of a child's hum. On a cold platform orbiting Echo Terra, a synthetic librarian opened its eyes and wept rust. And somewhere deep in the Dominion's abandoned listening array, a monitor lit red. A junior custodian, bored and muttering, leaned closer to the anomaly. A phrase appeared on screen. The testament is alive. He frowned, pulled his superior. Within a cycle, the phrase had reached command. Within 3, they had begun to panic, because that phrase hadn't been heard in 500 years. And the last time it did, an entire memory cluster collapsed under its own gravity. Back in Relay 717, Cyril sat before the console. The scar no longer flickered. It burned, not with fire, but with certainty. She was no longer afraid. Not because the voice had made her strong, but because the voice had made her remember something she didn't know she'd forgotten. She touched her temple, and there, deep in her own thoughts, a whisper echoed. Cyril, you are not transmitting anymore. She blinked. You are being heard. She looked up. Across the tower wall, a second scar had begun to form. Not painted, not glowing, but burned, as if something within the relay was now marking its own memory. A beginning, not of war, but of reckoning. She breathed once, then whispered, "Let it begin," and the tower began to hum. Subscribe to HFY Chronicles. Continue the journey in the full playlist, Chronicles of the Lost.